Okay, so this is not really going to be a traditional review of the all-new Honda Amaze. More of a conversation about a car that doesn't really make any major headlines per se, but gets everything just about right. It's the car equivalent of Goldilocks at the third bowl of porridge, at least in the budget car space. Now, when Honda launched the new Amaze, there was one important part of the presentation that I felt went a little bit by the wayside. And that said that over half the people who ever bought a Honda Amaze bought it as their first ever car. So today I'm going to put on my first time car buyer hat on and take a look at this car to discover what is it about the Amaze that meets my expectations, what is it about the Amaze that exceeds my expectations, and what is it about this car that I wouldn't have expected at all, for better or for worse. Let's get to it. Now first, a little bit of a disclaimer. Yes, this is a compact car, but it looks a lot more compact because I am standing next to it as a person who is 6'5". So I'll put in some footage of Arun next to the car so you get a real world idea of what it's like next to a regular sized human being. Now, as a first time car buyer, would I be proud to say that this is my first car? I think so, because in this new generation, as we've seen as progression goes with the Amaze's different generations, the car has gotten a lot more mature with time. And here, that is a function of how Honda has combined, well, the designs of its big brothers. Up front, you see a lot of inspiration from the Honda Elevate, while at the rear, you see a very direct inspiration from the Honda City. In fact, when we saw the design sketches, of course, expectations were raised a little bit more than they should have been with that big sort of design. You would have thought that this is practically the car, same size as a Honda City if you went by those design sketches. But it's a very mature, classy, and clean looking bit of kit. And it's important to note that while we do say that, in those memes, it's a combination of the Elevate and the City, the front end and the rear end, executing that kind of balance in a completely smaller package is easier said than done. And I feel like Honda's done a good job on that front, as they have with the 15-inch alloy wheels. And even with the proportions, bear in mind, sub 4 meter is a length limitation where we usually see hatchbacks. And fitting in a 3-box design where you have to account for the bonnet, for the passenger cell, for the boot as well, it's a little tricky to do. And yes, it does have a slightly stubby boot, but all in all, this is objectively speaking a very good looking car. It also gets those flashy elements that until maybe 3 to 4 years ago, you couldn't really expect in your first car at all, like all LED lighting. Definitely gives it a lot more flash factor up front, as long as you don't become that first kind of car buyer who sees that he has nice LED headlights and every time he wants to pass a car just goes. God bless sedans and the kind of practicality that they offer, and thankfully you don't have any ungainly exposed metal bits over here. Not the most beautiful execution, but it's there. The boot itself, plenty practical, now the 400 liters of available boot space. Full-size check-in sized bag can get in over here, one of them, along with a medium-sized suitcase to top. You can also combine with a couple of check-in size bag that you can see right here. So it is a very practical boot, definitely enough for a small family to carry for, weekends worth of luggage, or if you need to make any airport runs. It could have taken a little bit more luggage as well if it weren't for the wheel well intrusions, because there is a good amount of length to play with as well as height within the boot. But because of the wheel well intrusions, you won't be able to get 2 very large bags in here, but still plenty practical. And you also have a full-sized spare tire underneath the boot floor, although the wheel itself is from the 14-inch that you get in the base model of the new Amaze. On the inside, let's divide the Amaze's first experience into 3 parts. What you see visually, what you feel to the touch, and how everything has been fitted. Now visually, Honda's done a fantastic job in my books, because you're getting that proper baby Elevate vibe on the inside. The design is very clean, very tasteful. There's a very intelligent use of a light little silver trim strip along the dashboard. And the design, of course, when you combine beige and black, it's a classic combination that just works. It definitely makes the Amaze's cabin look very upmarket. Helps that the design has a lot of inspiration shared with its big brother, the Elevate SUV. Then comes the fitment quality. And again, Honda, as you'd expect, has done a great job on that front. There's no creaky bits, no real sharp edges. Everything fits properly. But the feel of materials is one place where, again, you're getting a little bit of a reminder that this is, at the end of the day, a budget car. So yes, the plastic quality is just about acceptable. There is a fair amount of flex on the door pads plastics. And while it does look like it's maybe a 9 on 10 visually, the actual quality of plastics that you have on the inside is probably going to be a 6.5 to 7 on 10, which is reasonable considering the segment that this car is sitting in. On the cabin space and practicality front, here's another place that Honda always knows how to knock it out of the park, given the kind of compact footprint that they're playing with. So, no suspense. If you are looking at a great car that can seat 4, this is it. Provided the people are of an average build, and the height limitation, I'd say your comfort zone is 5'7", 5'8" at a stretch. Anything above that, and you might have a little bit of knee room or leg space left, but headroom, especially at the rear, will become a problem. And this is something that is common with even the Maruti Suzuki Dzire for that matter. Honestly, in the subcompact sedan space, I feel like the Hyundai Aura is the only one that does a good job of offering good, or great rather, rear seat headroom. So if you're a tall person, or if you wear headgear like a turban, the rear seat experience for somebody like you is not going to be that great. Even the front end experience, if you're very tall, it does feel a little bit cramped. So yeah, average build, average height, absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. The seats, very comfortable if you have, again, an average build. But the core issue here is that the seat cushioning is a little bit too much on the soft side. So for short commutes, you know, maybe half an hour to 45 minutes to the office, that time you're fine. But if you have to spend prolonged hours in these seats, you can feel like the cushioning has a little bit too much give. You start feeling the rails a little bit. It's a little bit more apparent if you're slightly on the heavier side. But yeah, the seats could have done with that added level of firmness. But if you are looking at overall comfort, you do have headrests both at the front as the rear. They are adjustable at the front, non-adjustable at the rear. And thankfully, you do have proper 3-point seat belts for all the occupants. If you're talking about practicality, yes, the door pockets are plenty accommodating for 1-liter bottles and then some. There are cups and can holders in the middle. There is a storage area in between the front seats where ideally I would have wanted a armrest. But that is something that you can have fitted as an accessory as well. So yes, very spacious, very practical, and very sensible interior.
And in case you're wondering, no, this is not a car for someone well over 6 feet tall, aka me. The limited front seat movement means that I can't sit in a front passenger seat at all, a problem I also have in the Elevate. And even in the driver's seat, my knee would keep hitting the center console, although I could just about manage even with the manual transmission. Honestly, as spacious as the Amaze is for a small car, I can't help but miss the Honda Jazz for how it took things to the next level on this front, even with the same footprint.
Now in the rear seat, you have some conveniences to make the experience that little bit better. That includes this rear armrest that suffers from the typical problem that we see in a lot of Honda cars, of the armrest just slumping onto the seat base. It needs to stop at just about this point so it aligns with the door armrest properly. So yeah, rear armrest that could do with, I guess, a bit of Viagra. You also have these rear AC vents now, and that's just indicative of an important change that happens with this new Amaze, that the AC performance has seen a major upgrade. Now, we've been experiencing the car in temperatures of 28, 29 degrees. Humidity levels are kind of high, but definitely first impressions, even though this is not the peak summer, the AC performance has been really good. So even setting the temperature to like 22 or 23 degrees with a blower speed at 1 or 2, it feels like a blast chiller on the inside. So this could definitely prove to be a major positive for this Amaze. The features list includes LED projector headlights and fog lights, LED tail lights, a smart key that can be used to start the car remotely too, or even open the boot, push button start, tilt steering, auto AC with rear AC vents, a 12-volt socket at the front and the rear, wireless phone charger, and 2 Type A ports but no Type C charging ports at all. The 7-inch driver's display is a very tasteful execution and includes driving data like the range and efficiency, a G meter, and can even be used to manage some ADAS functions. The 8-inch touchscreen supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay wirelessly, and while the resolution is nothing to write home about, the interface is easy enough to understand. The lack of any feedback on touch though does prove to be quite the annoyance. The 6-speaker sound system gets pretty loud, but the sound quality distorts very quickly, so best stick to low volumes. The only thing that some people will find missing in this features list is a sunroof. Whether or not that's a necessity is for you to decide. But what's important about the Amaze is not just the kind of features you have available on this, the top spec, but also how well loaded the base V variant is. So even if you walk out of the showroom with the base variant, with the exception of maybe needing alloy wheels, you get a pretty loaded car. And that's for a car that's going to cost you probably less than 10 lakh rupees on road. Pretty good value. Safety features. 6 airbags, ABS with EBD and ISOFIX come as standard. You do get stability control, you have rear parking sensors, and you also have this, the lane watch camera, making its debut with the Amaze, linked to the left side indicator that gives you a better view of the left side mirror feed on the touchscreen infotainment system itself. It's a useful feature in the daytime, but once you get to low visibility conditions, the camera's usability also takes a little bit of a hit, and the same thing that you'll also experience when you're driving in through the monsoons. But a major highlight in the Amaze's safety package, of course, is the introduction of ADAS. The camera-based Advanced Driver Assistance System suite includes lead vehicle departure notifications, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, forward collision warning, and emergency braking, among others. First impressions paint a positive picture, and while the collision warning can be triggered easily in our conditions, we didn't face any unexpected auto braking. Lane assist is usable when the lane markings are defined properly and keeps the Amaze centered too. However, adaptive cruise control is best used on highways with sparse traffic, as the Amaze can seem too reactive in our conditions, which can easily annoy cars following you. Forgive me if I get a little bit emotionally while looking at this engine. As someone who owned a Honda Jazz for the better part of a decade, it's very familiar, the experience. So one of the pros of the 1.2 litre 4-cylinder IV Tech is that unlike the Desire, which gets the 3-cylinder Z12 engine, there isn't that little bit of a disco divane when you start up the car or if you're driving at really low revs. And this car at startup on the move definitely has that benefit of controlling vibrations as well as noise levels really well. It is a very polished car to drive, provided you have a relaxed driving style. And guessing that if you are a first-time car driver who's not being too excited, this is going to be a car that you will enjoy driving in the city, basic commutes. It has just the right amount of grunt. Where this engine is going to fall flat and where you're going to feel that additional lead of punch is when you're driving with a full passenger load, as well as when you want to make overtakes. And I'm not talking about just high-speed overtakes. If you're driving at 40 and want to get up to 60, even there when you're driving in the CVT, it'll need you to punch it a little bit. You will have to downshift maybe a gear or two if you're driving even in the manual. So yes, it is an engine that delivers its peak performance very high in the rev range. So as long as you're doing basic driving, commutes, just going around from place to place in a relaxed manner, you're absolutely fine. But when you need that added level of punch, you're going to have to give this car a good amount of revs to extract that kind of performance. Now the car itself does come with both 5-speed manual transmission as well as a CVT, which again becomes a major selling point considering its alternative is offering an AMT. And with the CVT, what you get is again a very smooth drive experience. There's no real head nod, it feels polished in that sense. And with the manual transmission, drivability is very easy. So you have light controls, the clutch, the gear shift action, absolutely bang on. So it is an easy car to live with, and especially with this generation, what Honda has done is shorten the initial two ratios. So you do get that additional pickup when it comes to first and second gear, just making it a little bit easier to get going in smooth flowing traffic. Third gear is quite tall and you can trudge along with it at a steady speed. But the second you need to make an overtake, you're going to have to go for a hard downshift as mentioned before. All in all, an engine that delivers smooth linear performance, refinement, predictability. Definitely a car that you'd be very happy to trust your driver with if he's going to be dropping the kids to school or dropping your spouse to work. But it is an engine that does have some weak spots. So when you're driving up on inclines, when you're driving at highway speeds, when you're driving with a full passenger load, that is a place where this engine requires you to sit at higher rev range of 3,000, 3,500 RPM at the very least. And those are going to be certain things that you need to account for when buying this car. Now, much like the engine, another spot where you see the Amaze's decided city focus is in its ride quality or suspension setup. So it is decidedly on the softer side. So when you're driving over potholes, bad bumps, rutted surfaces, as long as you're at low speeds, the bump absorption is simply fantastic. Suspension noise is very well controlled. There's no shock that you're going to feel inside the cabin, and it feels incredibly comfortable even over bad roads. The issue is, however, that because this suspension setup is sitting on the softer side, the second you load this up with passengers, or you drive at slightly higher speeds of 65-70 kilometers per hour on highways that are built with concrete, not that well finished, a little bit bumpy, or if you take a speed breaker at a slightly higher than normal speed, the suspension starts to show its weakness. It does get a little bit bouncy on the recovery. It may not feel all that comfortable, especially in the back seat. If you're planning to do an intercity trip, say from Mumbai to Pune, especially in the back seat, you can feel that recovery. You can feel a little bit of head nod, a little bit of bounciness in the suspension. So it is great if you're driving at low speeds and within the city. The second you go out with a heavy load, or if you're driving at higher speeds on unevenly finished roads, that is where the suspension setup being too soft does prove to be a little bit of a negative. As much as I'd like to end this video by giving you some over-the-top analogies about this new car, honestly, fundamentally, the Honda Amaze is still the same car, and I mean that in a good way. It gets the fundamentals of space and practicality bang on, the engine and transmission combinations are proven and reliable, and it just makes sense. In this new generation, what Honda has done is make it look more premium on the outside, definitely make it look more premium on the inside as well, while drizzling in the right set of features to make it feel something above its own segment. So if you're looking at buying your first car, or you want a value for money car for your small family to amble about in the city and just get the job done while throwing in the right set of features to be enjoyable at the same time, go for it.